The house was too quiet for the way my mind was screaming. I sat in the living room, lights off, no TV, just the clock on the wall ticking like a taunt. 3:10. She was supposed to be home by midnight. Not that it mattered what she was supposed to do anymore. Her last message had come hours ago, a lazy, dismissive "don't wait up," followed by a little emoji she used to send when we first started dating. Back when she still cared how I felt. Back when she hadn't decided I was just background noise to her own life. I stood up, the air in the room thick with the smell of something burnt, maybe the remains of my patience. I didn't pace. I didn't wring my hands. I planned. That was what I did best when the world started cracking at the seams. I made plans. And tonight, my plan was simple. When she walked through that door, she wouldn't find the man she had left behind. She would find someone who had already left her in every way that counted. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought by running back to Nathan, yes, Nathan, her ex, the one who used to call her his forever until she caught him kissing another girl at a party, she could make me break. She thought staying out all night at his place would twist the knife deep enough that I'd beg her to stop, to love me again, to be who she was before. She didn't know me at all. By the time her keys scratched at the door, my bag was packed, my mind was set, and the note I had written, 3 lines, sharp enough to leave scars, was folded neatly on the kitchen table. But that wasn't even the best part. I heard her stumble in, whispering something under her breath. Probably practicing some sad little lie she thought I'd be stupid enough to swallow. I didn't move. I wanted her to see me first. Sitting there in the dark, waiting, not like a victim, but like a verdict. She flicked on the lights and flinched when she saw me. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her makeup smeared like she had been crying, or laughing too hard at my expense. Her dress, the one she said she didn't even like anymore, was wrinkled and stained. She clutched her purse like it was a lifeline. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She opened her mouth, probably to launch into whatever excuse she thought would fix this. But I didn't give her the chance. "You were with him," I said. No anger, no shouting, just a statement heavy as iron. She blinked fast, tried to smile, tried to summon that old magic. "It's not what you think." I stood up, and the chair scraped back hard against the floor, the sound slicing through her pathetic little act. She jumped like she expected me to shout, to rage. But all I did was pick up the note, walk over to her, and hold it out. She didn't take it. "Read it," I said. She stared at it like it was poison. I said, "Read it." Finally, with trembling fingers, she grabbed it. Her lips moved as she read, but no sound came out. 3 lines. That was all it took. "You made your choice tonight. I made mine 3 hours ago. Goodbye." Her face crumpled. She started to reach for me, but I stepped back. That tiny motion, that refusal, hit her harder than any argument ever could. She realized then that she hadn't broken me. She had only set me free. She started to talk, fast, desperate, the words tumbling over each other, saying it didn't mean anything, that she was drunk, that Nathan kissed her, that she didn't even know how she got there, that she didn't want this to happen, that I wasn't supposed to find out. Like piling lies on lies could somehow build a bridge back to me. I didn't interrupt. I let her finish every last ugly syllable. When she ran out of breath, when the silence swallowed her whole, I finally spoke. "You went there to hurt me," I said. "You just didn't think I'd walk away before you could watch it happen." Her lip trembled, and for a moment, a single pathetic moment, she looked like the girl I had once loved. The girl who would have crossed oceans for me. But that girl was gone. Had been gone for a long time. Maybe she never existed at all. Without another word, I walked past her, out the door, down the steps, into the cold night that somehow felt warmer than the house we had built together. The bag on my shoulder was heavier than I expected, but my heart was lighter than it had been in years. Behind me, I heard her start to cry. Loud, broken sobs that echoed down the street. I didn't look back. Not once. The hotel room wasn't much. Beige walls, a window that looked out onto a gas station, a bed that squeaked every time you even thought about moving. It didn't matter. I wasn't there for the view. I was there because it was the first place I could find at 4 in the morning where I could be alone, away from the wreckage she had left behind. I dropped the bag by the door and sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the same clothes I had put on for dinner earlier that evening. Dinner she had forgotten to show up for. Another little hint I had ignored, like a fool trying to stay blind a little longer because it hurt too much to see. The room smelled like old cigarettes and lemon cleaning spray. It clung to my skin, the way her betrayal clung to my mind, thick and sour. I grabbed the TV remote just to have something to do with my hands and flipped it on without looking. Infomercials. Shiny people selling miracles that didn't exist. Somewhere in the chaos of my thoughts, my phone buzzed. I stared at it, half expecting it to be her. Begging, pleading, screaming. But it wasn't. It was a message from her sister. Dana. Just 3 words, you deserve better. I laughed. I actually laughed. Sharp and bitter. If only Dana knew just how much worse it really was. Because I hadn't told anyone yet about the second part. The part even I hadn't been ready to admit out loud. When she left for her girls' night, I wasn't completely clueless. I had a feeling, a sickening, gnawing instinct that this wasn't just another fight, another cold shoulder. So I did something I swore I would never do, something I hated myself for even thinking of. I checked her location. We shared it for safety, she used to say. And there it was. Not at some downtown bar. Not at her friend's apartment. Nathan's address. Plain as day. Sitting on my screen like a slap to the face. But it got worse. So much worse. After hours of staring at that blinking blue dot on my phone, I drove there. I stayed in the car across the street, hidden in the shadows. Watching. Waiting. At around 2 in the morning, the front door opened. She stumbled out, laughing, clinging to Nathan's arm like she couldn't even stand on her own. He kissed her forehead. She leaned into it like she belonged there. Like she hadn't just thrown away everything we built together for a man who had already proven he was nothing but empty promises. And then, before getting into his car, she looked around like maybe somewhere deep down she knew I was watching. Like some tiny shred of guilt twisted inside her. But it was too late. She didn't know it yet, but the version of me that cared was already dead. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from her. Long, frantic paragraphs about how sorry she was, how she didn't know what she was doing, how she needed to explain. Explain? There was nothing left to explain. I had seen enough. I threw the phone onto the bed and lay back, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, feeling a strange kind of peace settle over me. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't even relief. It was more like standing in the ashes after a fire you didn't start but knew was coming. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't need to. I just lay there, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. Somewhere, in that small, dirty room, a new version of me was starting to form, one that didn't need her apologies, her explanations, or her lies. She thought this was a game. She had no idea what she had started. And soon, she would find out. Morning bled into the room with a dull gray light, like even the sun didn't have the strength to shine on this disaster. I sat up slowly, my body aching not from any physical blow, but from the sheer exhaustion of carrying betrayal around all night. My phone sat on the nightstand where I had thrown it, screen cracked, messages still lighting up like sparks from a dying fire. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked out without even glancing back at the miserable little room. I needed coffee, something sharp and scalding to burn away the taste of last night. The diner was only 2 blocks away, a crumbling little place that smelled like burnt toast and desperation. Perfect. I slid into a booth by the window, ordered a black coffee from a tired-looking waitress named Marla, and stared out at the empty street. I should have felt empty too. But something inside me was beginning to shift. Something cold, something steady. Halfway through my second cup, the door banged open behind me. I didn't need to look to know it was her. You could feel her chaos from a mile away. She spotted me instantly. Her hair was a mess, thrown up in a bun that was falling apart, her eyes swollen and red. She wasn't wearing the same dress anymore. She had changed into an oversized hoodie, trying to look small, harmless. Like that could erase what she had done. She crossed the diner in 3 quick steps and slid into the booth across from me without waiting for an invitation. For a moment, she just stared at me, breathing hard like she had sprinted here. Maybe she had. I didn't say a word. Neither did she. The silence stretched between us, thick and ugly. Finally, she broke. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. Please just talk to me. I didn't move, didn't blink. Just let her sit there, drowning in her own choices. I made a mistake, she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away before she could touch me. The flinch that crossed her face was instant, raw. You made a decision, I corrected. Calm, sharp. No anger, just truth laid out plain and brutal. Her mouth opened and closed, struggling for words. It didn't mean anything, she said finally, the old, tired line dragging itself out of her throat. I leaned forward, my voice low enough that she had to lean in to hear it. You spent the night at his house. You chose him. You didn't stumble. You didn't trip. You climbed into his world with both feet and slammed the door behind you. Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. Not pity, not anger. Just a vast, endless emptiness where love used to live. You don't understand, she said, her voice shaking. I was drunk. I didn't know you knew exactly what you were doing, I said. You wanted to hurt me. You wanted to feel powerful again. Her face twisted like she was about to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Because she knew. Deep down, she knew. I'm sorry, she said, almost choking on the words. I laughed, soft and humorless. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you lost. That hit harder than any slap. She recoiled like I had physically struck her, and for a brief, savage moment, I saw the truth settle in her bones. The realization that she hadn't just hurt me, she had destroyed the version of me that cared enough to forgive her. I can change, she said desperately. I'll do anything. We can fix this. I finished my coffee, set the cup down carefully. You can't fix something you lit on fire just to watch it burn. She tried again, leaning across the table, voice rising. We can go to therapy, we can. No, I said, standing up. You can go to therapy. You can figure out why you chose to blow up your own life. I'm not going to sit in a room and pretend like I'm part of the problem. Her eyes followed me as I dropped a few bills on the table and turned to leave. Wait, she called after me, loud enough that heads turned. Wait, please. I paused at the door. Not because I was thinking about going back, but because I wanted her to see my face when I said it. I'm not your project, I said. I'm not your consolation prize. And I'm sure as hell not your backup plan. Then I walked out into the cold morning air, leaving her sitting there, surrounded by empty tables and silent judgment. The diner door swung closed behind me with a final, satisfying thud. The air outside sliced against my skin, cold and sharp, but it felt cleaner somehow. Like every step away from her peeled another layer of weight off my chest. I didn't rush. I walked slow, steady, through streets that looked different now, even though nothing had changed but me. She didn't follow. Maybe she knew there was no point anymore. I ended up at the park where we used to go when we first moved to the city. Back when we thought we were invincible. When Sunday mornings meant coffee cups balanced on the swings and plans whispered into each other's shoulders. Now the swings creaked emptily in the wind, and the only plans were the ones I was making without her. I sat down on a bench, shoved my hands deep into my jacket pockets, and let my mind unravel. I didn't miss her. I missed the life I thought we had. I missed the man I thought I was when I was with her. But none of that was real. And it was time I started living in the world as it actually was, not the one she pretended to build with me. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, more out of reflex than curiosity. Another message from her. This one shorter, more desperate. I'm coming to find you. We're not done. I stared at the screen, the words burning themselves into my mind. Not done. Not done. She thought she could declare that, as if she still had any say in what came next. I didn't respond. I didn't even block her. I wanted her to see the silence. I wanted her to feel it every time she stared at her phone and realized no answer was ever coming. A rustle behind me broke my thoughts. I turned, half expecting her. But it was someone else. An old man walking his dog, giving me a nod as he passed. Ordinary life marching on, completely indifferent to my private war. And somehow that gave me the final push I needed. I stood up and pulled out my second phone. The one she didn't know about. The one I had bought months ago when the lying started getting too thick to ignore. I scrolled through the files I had saved, the photos, the screenshots, the messages. All the evidence she had left like breadcrumbs, never thinking I would be smart enough, angry enough, hurt enough to follow them. I selected all of it and sent it in one huge blast, not to her, but to Dana. Her sister. The only person who ever looked me in the eye like I mattered. It took exactly 6 minutes for my phone to start vibrating like it was going to jump out of my hand. Calls. Messages. A hurricane of panic exploding from her end. I turned the phone off without even looking. Dropped it into the nearest trash can. Walked away. I didn't need her explanations anymore. I didn't need her promises. I didn't even need revenge. All I needed was distance. But life, as always, had other plans. Halfway down the block, a familiar beat-up sedan screeched around the corner, tires squealing against the asphalt. Her car. She was behind the wheel, hair flying, face twisted into something between rage and desperation. She cut the engine right in front of me and jumped out before the car even stopped rocking. "You're running away?" She screamed, her voice slicing through the air. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked her straight in the eye. "I'm walking away," I said. There's a difference. People were staring now, peeking out of windows, pausing on the sidewalks. She didn't care. She stormed toward me, hands clenched, teeth bared like she could physically force me back into the life she shattered. I made a mistake. She yelled again, like if she said it loud enough, it would undo everything. "No," I said, stepping back, refusing to let her close the distance. "You made a choice. You're not perfect either." She spat, the old tactic, trying to smear me so she wouldn't have to drown alone. "Maybe not," I said quietly. "But I never made you a fool. I never dragged you into someone else's bed to watch you burn." Her face crumpled for half a second, then hardened into something ugly and cold. "You think you're better than me?" She hissed. "I know I'm better than what you turned into," I said, and with that I walked around her, around the car, around the wreckage of everything we had built. And this time she didn't follow. Not because she didn't want to, but because she finally realized she couldn't. The world outside didn't care about endings. People hurried past, bundled in their coats, heads bent against the cold, phones pressed to their ears, lives spinning forward like nothing around them had shattered. And maybe that was the point. My world had cracked in half, but theirs didn't even notice. I walked. No destination, no map, just forward. Past the coffee shop where she used to drag me on Sunday mornings. Past the bookstore we once got locked inside during a rainstorm. Every street was a scar now, carved deep and permanent. I don't know how long I walked before I ended up in front of the apartment I'd rented months ago. It had been a backup plan then. A foolish hope that if things went wrong, I wouldn't have to start from zero. Now it was survival. I still had the keys. Still had a place to vanish to. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and felt the silence wrap around me like armor. No photos on the walls. No perfumes clinging to the air. Just emptiness, clean and absolute. I dropped my bag on the floor and sank onto the bare mattress I had left there. My body felt heavy, like all the strength I had used to walk away was draining out of me now that I was safe. But I didn't let myself collapse into grief. Not yet, because I knew something else was coming. I could feel it, and it didn't take long. A knock, sharp and furious, echoed through the door. I didn't move. I didn't answer. Another knock. Then her voice, muffled but clear. "I know you're in there." I waited, breathing slow and steady, while she pounded her fists against the wood like she could beat her way back into my life. "You can't just run," she screamed. "You can't just leave after everything." I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. She had left long before I did. She just hadn't physically packed her bags. She had packed her heart, her loyalty, her respect, all of it into someone else's arms and slammed the door behind her. The pounding stopped. Silence stretched so long I thought maybe she had finally given up. But then the sound of a key scratching at the lock. I froze. She had stolen one of my spare keys. Of course she had. The door cracked open, and there she was, standing in the entryway, hair wild, face red, eyes burning with something too messy to be love. Possession, maybe. Rage at losing control. "You can't do this," she said, voice shaking as she stepped inside. "You don't just get to leave me." I stood up slowly, every movement deliberate. "I already did." She shook her head violently. No, you're just mad." You're hurt. You don't mean it. She was pacing now, hands waving, her voice rising higher, faster, like she could talk her way out of this if she just moved quickly enough. I made one mistake, she said. One night. One stupid night. And you're throwing away years for it? I stared at her, feeling something cold and powerful settle into my chest. You spent the whole night at his house. You let me sit alone, wondering if you were dead or just choosing not to come home. And now you're here trying to pretend it's about one night? Her mouth opened, ready to spit another excuse. But this time, I didn't let her. It wasn't one night, I said, voice low and steady. It was every lie you told to get to that night. Every story you spun so you could do what you wanted without having to face what it meant. She looked like I had slapped her. Good. Let it hurt. She took a shaky breath, trying to find her footing again. I still love you, she said, almost whispering it, like the words themselves might heal the wreckage between us. And for one sickening second, a tiny part of me wanted to believe her. But then I remembered. I remembered the way she leaned into Nathan's kiss. I remembered the way she laughed, drunk on freedom she thought I couldn't see. I remembered the way she walked through our front door without even a flicker of shame until she saw what I had already done. I don't love you anymore, I said. Her body physically recoiled, like the words had knocked the breath out of her. You don't mean that, she whispered. I mean every word, I said, stepping past her, grabbing the door, holding it open. Now get out. She stared at me, stunned. And then, like something inside her finally broke, she shoved past me, storming out into the hall. But before I could shut the door, she turned around, eyes wild, and spat out one last shot. You'll regret this. I met her gaze, unflinching. I already regret every minute I wasted thinking you were worth saving. Then I closed the door, locked it, deadbolt, chain. This time, the door stayed closed. This time, I stayed free. I didn't move from the door for a long time after I locked it. Just stood there, breathing in the silence like it was something sacred, something earned. She was gone. For now. But I knew her. I knew the way her mind worked, chaos disguised as passion, selfishness dressed up as love. She wouldn't just let it go. Not when she couldn't stand losing. Not when the game she thought she controlled had slipped through her fingers. I turned away finally, pulled the curtains shut, sat down on the floor with my back against the wall, and let the weight of everything crash into me all at once. No tears. No breakdown. Just this relentless, gnawing exhaustion that reached all the way down to my bones. My whole life with her felt like it had been written in invisible ink, only now revealed under the harsh light of betrayal. Every lie, every manipulation, every time she had smiled just a little too wide while hiding something sharp behind her teeth. And somewhere inside that wreckage, I found something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Clarity. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I wasn't the fool she had counted on me being. I was awake. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since. What? Yesterday? 2 days ago? Time was a blur now. I grabbed my wallet, shoved it into my pocket, and headed out the back entrance, avoiding the front like I was dodging a battlefield. The diner was different this time. Less like a crime scene, more like a neutral zone. I sat at a corner booth, ordered pancakes and coffee, and let myself feel the smallest flicker of something that almost resembled peace. Halfway through my plate, my phone buzzed. Not her this time. Dana, can we meet? Her message read. It's important. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Was it a trap? Was she sending Dana to haul me back into the drama? Or maybe Dana knew more than she had let on. I replied simply, where? 20 minutes later, I was standing outside another coffee shop across town. One we used to joke was too hipster for us. Now it felt like foreign territory. Dana was already inside, sitting by the window, her coat still on, a nervous energy radiating off her. She spotted me and waved me over with a tight smile. I sat down across from her, studying her face for any signs of deceit. There weren't any. Just exhaustion and something heavier, guilt, maybe. I'm sorry, she said immediately, voice low. I should have told you sooner. I didn't speak. I wanted her to keep talking without my help. She fiddled with the sleeve of her sweater, gathering her courage. I knew, she said finally. About Nathan. The world around me seemed to fall away, leaving just her and those words hanging in the air. How long? I asked, voice like steel. She winced. Months. Maybe longer. I didn't have proof at first. Just little things. The way she talked about him. The way she avoided questions. And you didn't tell me? I asked, not angry, just cold. I tried, she said, leaning forward urgently. I hinted. I asked if you two were okay. She shut me down every time. And then when I finally confronted her, Dana cut herself off, looking down at her coffee. She what? Dana looked up, and there was real pain in her eyes. She said she didn't care if you found out. She said you were boring, predictable, that you wouldn't leave even if you knew. Felt like someone punched the air out of my lungs. Not because I hadn't suspected it deep down, but because hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way nothing else had. Boring, I repeated, almost laughing. Dana's face crumpled. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know what to do. I sat back, letting the information settle. It didn't hurt the way I expected it to. It didn't even feel like betrayal from Dana. Felt like confirmation. Proof that I hadn't been crazy. That the rot had been there long before I ever noticed the cracks. I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table even though I hadn't ordered anything. Dana grabbed my wrist before I could leave. There's more, she said. I froze. She let go immediately, as if realizing she didn't have the right to touch me anymore. Nathan isn't the only one. The room tilted slightly. Who else? I asked, my voice like ice. She shook her head, looking almost sick. I don't know their names. Just, there were others. Messages. Flirting. Stuff she bragged about when she thought nobody would tell you. I stepped back, needing space, air, distance from everything in this room. Dana didn't follow. She just sat there, shoulders slumped, watching me walk away. Out on the street, the cold hit harder. But this time I welcomed it. The truth wasn't a knife. It was a key. And now every lock she thought she had on me was breaking. The streets blurred around me as I walked, not aimless this time, but with a clear destination boiling in my mind. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was focused. Cold. Clear. Every memory of her, every fake smile, every calculated kiss, every time she looked me in the eye and lied without even blinking, it all crystallized into something hard and sharp inside me. I pulled out my phone, my real phone, the new one she didn't know existed. There was one person I needed to call. A man named Carter. Carter wasn't a friend. He was a fixer. A guy who helped people cleanly, legally detach themselves from disasters. I had kept his number buried in the back of my mind like a fire extinguisher behind glass, break only in case of emergency. I hit call. He answered on the first ring. You ready? He asked, no small talk. More than ready, I said. Good. Meet me in an hour. Bring everything. I shoved the phone back into my pocket and turned around, heading toward the storage unit I had quietly rented 3 months ago, back when my instincts started whispering that things weren't right. I had listened, not enough to stop it, but enough to prepare. Inside the storage unit was everything that mattered. Birth certificates, insurance policies, sentimental photos that didn't deserve to burn along with the rest of it. I grabbed the pre-packed duffel bag, zipped it closed, and locked the unit behind me without looking back. By the time I made it to the meeting spot, a dull, featureless office building on the edge of town, Carter was already there, sitting at a conference table littered with paperwork. She's not going to see this coming, he said, sliding a thick stack of papers toward me. I picked up the pen without hesitation. Divorce papers, full control of the apartment, frozen joint accounts. No chance for her to wring even one more ounce of pity or money out of me. It was brutal, efficient, exactly what she had earned. I signed every page with steady hands, Filing them first thing tomorrow, Carter said, gathering the papers with a satisfied nod. She'll be served before she finishes her morning coffee. I leaned back, feeling a strange lightness settle into my chest. Not happiness. Not relief. Just freedom. Pure, clean freedom. I left the office without a word and headed back to my apartment. For the first time since all this began, I wasn't walking like a man carrying a burden. I was walking like a man carrying a sword. The moment I stepped inside, I saw the envelope tucked under the door. No address. No return label. Just my name scrawled in a handwriting I knew better than my own. I picked it up carefully, turning it over in my hands before ripping it open. Inside was a letter, messy, rushed pages of apologies, accusations, desperate justifications. She begged me to talk to her, promised she could make things right, insisted she still loved me and that Nathan meant nothing. There were even ugly threats buried under all the sugar, about how I would regret leaving her, about how I would be lost without her. But the last line stopped me cold. I made a mistake, but you're making a bigger one if you think you can ever love someone like you again. It wasn't an apology. It was an attack. Her final play, to leave me doubting myself. I crumpled the letter in my fist and tossed it into the trash. I didn't need her permission to heal. I didn't need her forgiveness to move forward. I didn't need anything from her ever again. The night fell heavy and black around the city, but inside me, something had shifted. There was no sadness left, no grief, only the slow, steady drumbeat of something new. A future that didn't have her poison woven through every part of it. She thought she could break me. She thought wrong. And by morning, she would find out just how wrong she had been. Morning hit like a hammer. Not soft or slow. It slammed through the blinds, demanding attention. I didn't bother trying to ease into the day. I was already dressed before the sun fully cracked the horizon. Already out the door before the city even rubbed the sleep out of its eyes. At exactly 8:15 a.m., Carter texted me, "It's done. She's served." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I grabbed a coffee from the place around the corner. Not the old one she liked, not the one filled with our ghosts. A new one, a clean slate. I sat by the window, coffee cooling in my hands, and waited. It didn't take long. The first call came at 8:32. Blocked number. I let it ring. The second call at 8:34. Her number. I watched it light up the screen, then flicker away. The text started at 8:36. Long walls of frantic pleading, blaming, promising. Each one angrier than the last. I sipped my coffee, flipping through them like a man flipping through junk mail. Useless. Meaningless. Then, at 9:01, the inevitable shift. Threats. First subtle. How unfair it was to ambush her. How she deserved better after all she put up with. Then sharper, crueler. She would take everything. She would make sure everyone knew the truth. The truth. The word sat bitter in my mouth. She didn't know the truth if it punched her in the heart. I finished my coffee, tossed the cup into the trash, and headed out. Not back to the apartment. Not yet. She would be waiting there, sure that she could corner me into another fight. Another chance to cry and claw and manipulate her way back into control. But I had other plans. I met Carter again 2 hours later at another neutral, boring location. A quiet lawyer's office that smelled like paperwork and inevitability. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were the real weapons. Bank records showing she had siphoned money from our joint account for months to fund her secret little getaways. Credit card statements with charges she never could explain. Copies of messages she had sent not just to Nathan but to 2 other men. Sweet nothings, flirty pictures, drunken confessions. Concrete. Solid. Unbreakable. If she wants a fight, Carter said calmly, she'll lose. I nodded, barely able to hold back the bitter laugh. She had no idea how badly she had already lost. We set everything into motion. Emergency account freezes. Property separation filings. Notifications to her workplace about the pending changes in legal status. Something that would hit her pride harder than anything else. She loved her image. Loved being the one everyone envied. Soon enough, there would be nothing left for anyone to envy. I spent the rest of the day moving the last of my personal belongings out of the apartment. No warning, no confrontation. She wasn't there when I arrived. Maybe still out trying to spin her version of events to anyone who would listen. Good. It was easier to work without the noise. Box after box, piece by piece, I packed up my real life. Not the life she thought she could poison, and rebuilt it outside of her reach. By sunset, the place looked barren. Hollow. Just a shell of what it used to be. Perfect. I left the key on the counter. No note. No parting words. She didn't deserve a goodbye. When I finally stepped back out into the street, I felt lighter than I had in years. The cold bit into my face. The sky above me cracked into shades of orange and bruised purple. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I was free of her, but because I was finally free of who I had to become to survive loving her. Across the street, I spotted her. Standing by her car, arms wrapped around herself, phone clutched in one hand like a lifeline that was slipping through her fingers. She looked smaller than I remembered. Lost. Alone. She saw me. For a heartbeat, her face lit up, hope flaring like a last desperate match. Then she noticed the boxes. The empty look in my eyes. The key still gleaming on the kitchen counter through the open door behind me. And I watched it happen. Watched her realize it was over. Not just the fight. Not just the argument. Everything. She didn't run toward me this time. She didn't scream or cry or beg. She just stood there as I walked right past her, never looking back. Her world was crumbling. And for once, I wasn't under the wreckage. The city swallowed me up like it never had before. Streets I once hated for their noise and dirt now felt like freedom. Every red light, every honking car, every stranger brushing past, it all reminded me I was finally invisible to her, unreachable, untouchable. But of course, it wasn't over yet. Not for her. Later that night, just as I was unpacking the last box into my new apartment, a small, clean place without a single memory buried in its walls, the knock came. Not loud, not desperate, just persistent, like she believed if she knocked long enough, she could still force her way back into a life she no longer owned. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe heavy. I just waited. The knocking stopped. A pause. Then, a slip of paper slid under the door. For a second, I considered ignoring it, just kicking it aside and going back to rebuilding what she had tried to wreck. But something in me wanted to see, not because I cared about her, because I wanted to see just how low she would go now that she had nothing left to bargain with. I picked up the paper. One line, scrawled messily across the page. I'm pregnant. The world tilted slightly, not from fear, not from sadness, from the pure, calculated rage of realizing she had gone there, used that as her last grenade. I crushed the paper in my fist, the answer already burning through my veins. I didn't believe her, not for a second. It was too perfect, too convenient, too predictable. A woman who had lied about small things without blinking wouldn't flinch at lying about something this big if it meant keeping control. I grabbed my phone, dialed Carter's number. He answered immediately, expected the call. What's the play? She says she's pregnant, I said coldly. A low whistle through the receiver. Predictable. Get ready, I said. Because if she thinks this is her ticket back into my life, she's about to find out the hard way it's not. He was silent for a moment. Then, you want to force a test? Publicly, I said without hesitation. Officially. No room for games. If she's lying, she'll crack. She's lying, I said. I didn't need proof to know it. I had looked her in the eyes too many times. I had heard the way truth sounded when it came from her mouth. Twisted, poisoned, used like a weapon. And yet a small, logical part of me knew, if by some impossible chance she was telling the truth, I would handle it. Not by crawling back to her. Not by pretending we could fix what was shattered. But by stepping up without ever stepping down to her level. I sat back on the couch, staring up at the ceiling. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. The man I chose to be when nobody was watching, when nobody was rewarding me for it. And right then I made the silent vow she would never own another part of my life. Not my money. Not my heart. Not even my future. The phone buzzed in my hand. A new message from her. Please, just talk to me. For the baby's sake. I didn't reply. Didn't call. Didn't rage. Instead, I forwarded the message straight to my lawyer, attaching a formal request for a paternity test, court-ordered, public, final. She wanted to play games? Fine. But this time, the rules were mine. And she was already losing. The days that followed weren't filled with chaos the way she probably expected. No screaming matches. No desperate reconciliations. No emotional phone calls at midnight. Just cold, sharp, surgical movements. My lawyer filed the paperwork the next morning. The court accepted the request without blinking. She couldn't refuse. If she wanted to prove her claim, she would have to show up, stand in front of strangers, and let the truth, whatever it was, rip out of her in full daylight. For 2 days, she tried to flood me with messages. Apologies dressed up as demands. Demands wrapped up as apologies. Stories about how the night with Nathan was an accident, how she still believed in us, how the pregnancy was a miracle meant to fix everything. I didn't answer a single one. I didn't block her either. Let her talk to the void. Let her exhaust herself against the walls I had finally built around my life. The test date came faster than she could scramble to make up new lies. When I arrived at the clinic, she was already there. Sitting in a plastic chair, arms wrapped around her stomach like a human shield. She looked pale, small, like the walls of her castle were caving in with every tick of the clock. She looked up at me when I walked in, eyes wide, shimmering with tears she had once been able to weaponize with terrifying precision. They didn't work now. I checked in at the desk without acknowledging her. Sat across the room. She tried once, just once, to catch my gaze. I didn't give her that either. When the nurse called us back, she hesitated. For a second, I thought she might run. But she didn't. She stood up on trembling legs and followed them back. The test was quick, brutal in its simplicity. Swab, seal, done. Cold science cutting through hot lies. We left without speaking. The clinic doors shut behind us with a hollow thud that sounded exactly like closure. 2 days later, the results landed in my inbox. I opened them while standing in the middle of my empty living room. The city stretching out dark and wide beyond the windows. Negative. Not mine. Never was. The laugh that ripped out of me was rough, wild, almost unfamiliar. Not from joy, not even from anger, but from the pure, electric freedom of it. She had thrown everything at me. Lies, betrayal, manipulation, desperation, and I had stood through all of it. Not because I was stronger, not because I was smarter, because I was finally willing to see the truth and live in it, no matter how much it burned. I sent the result to my lawyer. No words, no commentary, just the facts. The divorce papers moved through like a blade through silk after that. No arguments, no negotiations. She had no ground left to stand on. She tried to reach out one more time. One final email, long and rambling, half apology, half blame, all poison. She said she had lost herself trying to be what I needed. She said I was too cold to love. She said she never meant to hurt me. I didn't reply. I didn't even finish reading it. I deleted it, emptied the trash folder, and never looked back. The apartment I moved into wasn't fancy. The job I picked up wasn't glamorous. The life I rebuilt was simple, honest, mine. And in that life, there was no place for her. No lingering sadness. No unanswered questions. Just a quiet, fierce kind of peace, the kind you earn, not the kind anyone gives you. If I could go back, would I have seen the signs earlier? Maybe. Would I have walked away sooner? Probably. But I don't regret it. Not anymore. Because every lie she told me, every night she spent betraying me, every desperate move she made to pull me back into her destruction, it all pushed me here. To a life where I chose myself. Where loyalty isn't a currency to be spent and discarded. Where love isn't something you have to lose your soul to earn. If anyone reading this is still standing in the burning wreckage, wondering if you're strong enough to walk through the fire, let me tell you, you are. And on the other side, there's air so clean you'll wonder how you ever breathed anything else.